Hello and welcome to the Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena.
And this is where we talk about the good, the bad, and all the shift in between.
We'll just talk mad shift.
Let's get into it. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about an author, Jim Rohn, who wrote a book and popularized something that is kind of a little bit controversial even between me and you, which is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So yeah, we want to get into that and just kind of have a little discussion about it. But first, we'll get into these skin deep cards. And Lena, you can go first.
All right. What do you think I think is my greatest achievement thus far?
Well, aside from having kids, I'm
more than a uterus.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think you think? Well, I would maybe healing me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I kind of said that in some ways.
I was thinking it was, bringing healing to family members.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say by far that feels like the most meaningful achievement of anything.
Little egotistical of me to make me the subject.
It's not all about you, Noel, but it is. Okay.
Today it is.
Today it is. All right.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And your question is, when was the last time you healed through me?
Man, I feel like these are just like, okay, well, you know what? When we went deep into your healing journey and we were able to really kind of share our childhood kind of perspectives and histories, which were different, than I think each of us thought they were. And I found, that hearing your perspective on our childhood did heal things for me. Just hearing how you viewed, me when I would come over to visit with Mom, because we were raised in different households, and how I thought like I had left you behind, because we were separated so young. That, you telling me, no, I was thinking, you got to get out of here. What are you doing here? And, I was thinking, oh my God, I've left my brother.
Yeah.
And just to hear that, like it just shifted something in my brain. Like, you don't need to hold on to that anymore.
Because
he thought you left him.
One of the first things you said to me was, the hardest thing that I ever did was leave you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Well, I was only 2 at that time. So, but I had a totally different viewpoint, because every time you came over, I was like, oh, she's got to get out of here. This guy is not safe. This house is not safe.
Yeah.
And so I almost unintentionally, but was like a pain in the ass to you, I guess, and vice versa. So we were kind of triggering each other, but that was the real thing, is I didn't know that you thought you left me, and I was like, please leave. you know? Not because I didn't want you here, but
my own safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of just took this weight off of me of like, I don't have to carry that anymore, that I left my brother.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that's.
That was a big one for me too, because I didn't understand that part of it. So to hear that part, it kind of helped me with all the other stuff, because we had a lot of conflict when we were growing up, as rare as we seen each other. I mean, we seen each other, but we didn't live together. But when we did, it was, we had our good times and we had our bad times, but the bad times I felt had context now.
Yeah.
I think that's what it did for me, is it gave context to what you were going through and what I was going through. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
I can kind of see you were just kind of doing your own thing and trying to deal and survive. And I was doing the same. So.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that's been really beautiful about our relationship as siblings, is I realize like how rare that is, because just because kids even grow up in the same house or have the same parents, your experience of your parents is not the same.
Mm-hmm.
And I was assuming something about your experience that wasn't true, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And then to be able to go, hey, this is what was happening for me as adults, is like, wow, here's this person who we have all of our history together, so much of it, known each other our whole lives, whether or not we were in the same house all the time. But it just deepened this relationship of, kinship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So highly suggest have a nice conversation with your siblings, even when you think it's hard. You never know what's under there.
Yeah. Don't wait till death, divorce, or
diagnosis. One of the 3 Ds. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not do that.
Let's not.
All right, so let's get into this topic about you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And when you first said this to me, I was thinking, well, is that really true? But there is, after like kind of doing we've kind of done some research on this and found some statistics, and it really does kind of point all in that direction. But so what are your thoughts on how has that really played into your life, the people that you've been surrounded with?
Well, it was a statement that a friend made to me about, over a couple, maybe almost 2 decades ago. And I was at kind of a low point in my life. I think I was, just really trying to figure things out. And she had said to me that someone said to her, you are the average of the 5 people you hang out with, the 5 books you read, the 5 shows you watch, the music you listen to. And I was like, whoa, like there was a moment in my brain that went, pay attention to that. And I think it even means more to me now than it did then, but it was just like a click, like,
there's something here.
Remember that.
Yeah,
remember that. And, later on, I started to look at that and think, is that true? And it was true because, when I started to look about like, who am I hanging out with and what's going on for them? And I probably was surrounding myself with people who were in similar situations to me because what is the whole thing about misery loves company?
Yeah.
Right. And so you just feel seen and heard when you're in a group of people who are going through the same things that you are, which can be beautiful.
Yeah.
But if you start just getting stuck in a loop of complaining constantly about your spouse or about work or whatever, then pretty soon you're just like, yeah, me too. But it's not a good me too.
Playing the victim roles.
Yeah. Here's all of us, a bunch of like, just people complaining about the same things, and we feel a kinship through that. But is it actually helping any of us grow? And that's really the question to ask. And it was another thing that someone important to me had said, advice that they had been given was, when you're running your race, meaning you're doing the things that you love.
Your purpose what brings you joy.
What's bringing you joy. Like you're running your race and you're like, yeah, here we are. Oh my gosh, I'm running my race. And you look around, those are your people.
Yeah.
Because they're running the same race. Not like you're racing against each other, but when you're running at your speed, you're running
similar goals.
And you look around, those are your people. Those are the people that are probably going to be the better influence on you. So that really stuck with me, and it became something kind of just like a belief that formed. And I think that helped me, along the path of healing and growing and remembering that.
Yeah. I mean, when you talked about the books that you read and the stuff that you absorb, like I thought a lot about since I've been doing, prior to like this self dive into myself, this subterranean dive into self-awareness. I was listening to a lot of mystery and murder, true crime podcasts and all that stuff, and was all into that stuff. And since now, I really can't listen to those things like I used to. I don't find the joy in it. And I really found that the reason why I was listening to those is because I was looking for other people that had really bad things happen to them they survive or they don't or whatever. Just worse things happen to people, and mine isn't as bad.
Wow.
And, listening to you say that really made me think, that kind of connects the dots a little bit on the things that I absorb on a daily, even music. Like Sundays, I like to listen to a very specific type, island vibe, reggae, whatever, something that's just easy listening, or Lionel Richie, something easy like Sunday morning really comes up always. Yeah. That's
a classic.
Something that our parents used to listen to or whatever would be like, oh, I'm going to listen to this, and it's kind of reset and calming. But sometimes we listen to, music for working out, and it's very pumped up and all that stuff. So that really does influence our emotions and our vibration.
Rage
of what we're doing.
Music.
Yeah. And with the podcast, the crime, podcast, man, it was so much negativity that I would come home with emotions sometimes because I was angry about the situation, or I would be triggered in some way just from what I was absorbing through the day. So not just people, but I think,
no, definitely. I mean, one of the things that was the music, the books that you listen to. Now we got to add, you are an average of the 5 podcasts you listen to.
Yeah.
And if they're all true crime and murder,
Yeah, and when I try to mix it up, sometimes now I listen to a lot of self-help stuff and wellness, but I do need to sprinkle in some fantasy and things like that where it's some mystery and magic or something going on in the books, because sometimes it's just too much and overwhelming when you have too much emotion. But yeah, it's definitely impacted me in terms of what I absorb nowadays, and so I could see the people could be also.
I didn't even think about that. I used to listen to a lot of true crime too. And then now I can't.
Yeah.
It just feels like, I'm like death and doom. Used to watch a lot of SVU, and it was like, dun, dun, dun. And I mean, I would have the worst dreams because I used to go to sleep watching SVU.
I do with Law and Order, same thing. Dun, dun. Like,
and it's like, whoa, the dreams not good.
Yeah.
And then how is that affecting my nervous system? Like walking around, just constantly thinking like, oh, they're probably, a murderer or whatever. So, man, I didn't even think about that with podcasts.
Yeah.
But there's, the thing is too, there's, we had a debate about this, like, is that true? I don't know. And there's a lot of stuff even online that says like, it's a debatable topic, right? But there's actually a lot of statistics. And there's a lot of other, very well-known motivational people, leaders in history that have also said this. And the first one was Jim Rohn. He was the motivational speaker and author, and who kind of coined the phrase, you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it was really the influence of your inner circle on your success and your personal development.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also Andrew Carnegie. And
How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's an oldie, but
that's Dale Carnegie.
Oh, Dale
Carnegie.
Okay.
Andrew Carnegie was a philanthropist. And he said, who you surround yourself will determine your success and influence your character. Okay, so maybe you think that's true, maybe you don't. Maybe you should start looking a little closer and, kind of see, is that it's statistically true, but we'll go into that later. And then Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. And, that's when they're talking about masterminds and being in the company of people who come together and support each other's goals.
Yeah.
Things like that. Dale Carnegie, he wrote How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And this was actually a book that I kind of required all of my kids to read before they were done with high school. Wow. That's pretty early. It's such an influential book. It's such a piece of gold. And it's really an older book. Yeah. I mean, he passed away in 1955. Yeah. But it just talks about the importance of emotional intelligence.
Nurturing relationships, understanding people's needs and wants. And
yeah. Yeah. Even just remembering someone's name. Yeah. Things like that. But it was like the role of others in your personal professional growth. Yeah. And then all the way back to Socrates. Yeah. And okay, so he stressed the importance of surrounding yourself with individuals who encourage critical thinking and self-reflection. Yeah. So somebody who's going to maybe call you out and say, is that really true? Or because I noticed this. And so that self-reflect, not just somebody who's like, yeah, man, you're right. That's terrible. Me too. This is, let's just all commiserate. So just kind of pushing you to expand your view, expand the way that you're thinking or
because some of the most important people around us are the ones most willing to tell us when we're screwing up or we're doing something wrong. Oh yeah, in a healthy way. Yeah, and call us forward.
Call you forward. Yeah, that's absolutely true. It's not calling you out. Mm-hmm. There's a difference between calling you out and calling you forward. And when you have friends or you're surrounded by people who will call you forward, I mean, just think about how that sounds. Yeah. Calling you forward.
What about the thing where you have, I don't know, because I've never been a billionaire or millionaire, but what about when you have these extremely elite, wealthy people that are constantly have a bunch of people who just say yes to them and aren't, they're successful and they've reached that level, but sometimes they get to a place where they're surrounded with people who don't call them forward and just say yes to them because they're kissing their ass or,
afraid to say
something. Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say those are the 5 friends and influential people they're hanging out with. I bet you if you asked them a little deeper, who actually are your core friends? Who are the people you spend time with? Those might be the people that are under your employ, but they're probably not the people who helped you get where you are.
Okay.
Yeah. in order to build to where you are then, that you were not surrounded by people that told you that every idea was a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. That's not,
Yeah.
there's
That's
no way.
not how you got there. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
true.
And when you bring up like even about, the billionaires and all like people who are in the elite income status. I mean, there was a study published in the Journal of Social Forces that found that income is highly correlated with the average income of your 5 closest friends. So, I mean, it just suggests that, there's a big influence on your social circle that can influence your economic status.
And that touches a little bit, like segues into our previous episode of upper limit living, where, we think we can only jump that 7 inches in that jar, the fleas.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we're surrounded by people who we only see jump this high, we don't know that we can go to the next level.
You don't even know there's another level that you can get to. But when you're surrounded by people who are like high achieving, then you are like, well, that's actually possible. How do I do that? And if you're hanging out with that kind of crowd, then you're asking, hey, what do I do? How do I do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think naturally through our lives, I'm going to be 48 this year, so it's like I've had friends since I was tiny, and I still have a group of friends that I've known since I was like 8 or 9 years old, and we still hang out and do things, not as often as we did, but I think it's important to know that it's not about leaving friends or groups. It's more about expanding and growing into other groups also, because it doesn't necessarily, because sometimes there's an invitation for those other people to elevate themselves also.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can bring your core friends with you, and you could be the person that's the invitation to step up into higher. But I think if we keep ourselves small,
then we're keeping everybody small.
Yeah, we're keeping everybody small. And those core friends will, be influenced or have an invitation if they want to expand into whatever else anybody else is stepping into.
Because it's not about, it's not about money. It's not about being a billionaire or millionaire or whatever. It's really about like your own personal growth and becoming more of who you are. And, by doing that, you become an invitation for others to do the same.
Yeah.
But if you're going to stay kind of in a place where you're surrounded by people who are constantly complaining or not wanting to be called forward, then where is your opportunity to do so for yourself?
Yeah, because it's also an opportunity for your existing groups to maybe go deeper in deepening some of it. And I've been able to do that with some of our core friends and just develop beautiful relationships that I didn't know was even possible because we went below the surface a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about leaving friends behind, but also just expanding. And while you're like, for me right now, doing this breathwork facilitation and health and wellness, I'm running this a little bit different race. So I mean, I'm not spending as much time as I did with other things, particularly because I'm in school also. So there's not a lot of bandwidth for that.
Yeah.
But I feel it's important to just expand and continue to run this race because I'm actually meeting new people and other opportunities are arriving because I'm putting myself out there into other groups and other places. So
yeah. Does it feel like it's more in alignment with where you're headed?
Yeah. I mean, just the aha moments of having any kind of a conversation with somebody in whatever setting I'm in now, it tends to lead to a deeper question or something that I'm, looking into and it expands into something else that I wasn't even aware of.
Well, there is this thing called emotional contagion. So it's, studies showing that emotions are contagious within social networks. Yeah. So if you are, if you're hanging around in a bunch of negativity or you come negative, like not you're coming in with that negative energy, it actually is can act like an infection.
Yeah.
And so it starts to spread through your network.
Yeah.
And
it's one of the reasons why I felt called to be affiliated with a men's circle because that's more of empowerment and not like the Lonely Husbands Club where we, just bash whatever it's going on. It's more about self-improvement and self-empowerment.
Yeah.
And finding ways to deal with emotion and co-regulation between individuals.
Co-regulation.
Yeah.
There you go.
Learning how to, because there's some of us who are better able to manage their own emotions, emotional regulation. And sometimes I feel really, even with this last men's circle, there was people were co-regulating me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was like, wow, this is such a powerful thing. So,
Yeah.
in
And
that
you're
way,
all growing.
yeah, and we're all growing, and it's more of a positive thing than it is about just sitting in victimhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Because you can co-regulate in victimhood too.
Yeah, you can,
Mm-hmm.
but it's stay stuck.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's called the Stay Stuck
yeah,
Club.
the stay stuck club. Yeah,
Oh yeah. I mean, there's so many studies, but they're like talking about how over time even. So if you're with happy individuals, you are more likely to become happy yourself.
yeah. I've got a really good friend named Paul, and we are in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I always had this assumption, which is this was I don't know if you call it a watershedding moment, but my therapist asked me, "Do you consider yourself a pessimist or an optimist?" And I always thought I'm an optimist. I'm a half glass full. I always wanted to make people happy and all these things. I'm just trying to be the life of the party or keep people positive. But she was quick to inform me that actually I am a pessimist. And it was a shocker to me because then when she told me, I was like, am I? And really, that's what makes me a great manager at work, is because I look for the defects where we need to improve and all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is some balance to that. But I had this friend, Paul, who was, just a pessimist and always was the naysayer, had negative things to say. And eventually we got to a place in our friendship where I had to cut him off. And we're still I love this guy like a brother, but there was a part where I was in a bad spot and he was negative. And even though he had such a positive influence and helped me with managing my emotions and teaching me about all these things, just in his own personal life, he had a lot of negative outlooks. So I felt like it was draining my cup. So I really needed to pull myself, create a boundary. And so we got into an argument one day, and I told myself, I got to cut him off because he's pulling me backwards, and not by any intention on his side, but he just happened to be going through something at the same time as I was. And so we couldn't co-regulate together. We were actually pulling each other down, and I sensed it.
Yeah.
And so pulled away from each other for about 3 months. And then I had a conversation like, hey, this is what was going on for me. I just felt like a negative pull. And I just had an adult conversation saying, you're really pessimistic, and all the negative stuff was really just pulling me down. And he, had some humility and understood that part of it. And we were able to get past that. And I tried to be a more positive, influence, but knowing that I'm also the mirror to him and I'm also a pessimist.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a believer in it. He was living fully in it, and I was trying to fake like I wasn't in it. But him being that way actually helped me to see who I was, but it took stepping away from that to realize it, to set a boundary, and that the people that I was hanging around with, and he was very influential to me in that time and still is to this day. But in that particular moment, the dynamic was just off. And so I realized for myself that it just wasn't a healthy situation. So I had to pull back, but we don't always know to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a lot of times if you're not aware of it, you just kind of flow into it. It's like the path of least resistance,
Yeah. Well, it was very easy to vent with him, and because he's a tremendous listener. And that part was good. But I think if we focus, too much on the negative, whatever we focus on grows. And I felt like our conversations were highly revolved around the negativity. And so now, coincidentally, our conversations focus more on the positivity and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because of what I'm doing or both of us are kind of growing together, but I would say the latter, that we've found our own ways to, become happy. And then we pump each other up in a way. We empower each other rather than finding comfort in each other's wallowing in our own, sadness kind of thing. Because we did that for many years, but then we just got to a point where now we need to build,
So it took like being an adult and saying, actually, this isn't working for me.
No, I started to feel like buried in all the stuff because it was like, oh, this is happening. And he had a lot of similar things that happened in his life also that I could learn from. But you get to a point, I heard somebody say, when you get to a point when you feel buried, that may actually be a good thing because you might be a seed that's just been planted, and now it's time to grow, So
I like that. Say that again.
yeah, when you get to a place where you feel absolutely buried, it may be a good thing because now you've been planted.
Yeah.
You
You
know,
might be actually able to grow.
we're able to grow because you've kind of hit bottom in a sense.
Yeah.
And when you feel buried, that's usually where that proverbial bottom that you're
Mm-hmm.
hitting, and so it's an opportunity to look for that treasure in the trigger.
Yeah.
And look for that string to pull, and that's kind of what we did back then, was pull ourselves out of it.
Yeah. I like that.
Mm.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's where all the good things can come from.
Yeah.
So would you say that that's what you can do? So what if someone is in the situation where they're listening to this and they're like, perhaps, maybe this is something that's happening.
Yeah.
Well, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just like not have any friends anymore? Am I supposed to stop listening to true crime? Like what are the things to do?
Well, the true crime parts were a lot easier for me because those just became, I mean, it was like whatever these reality shows were just showing me all negative things and bad things that happen. It's like watching, a NASCAR race, and you don't want to see people crash, but that's the exciting part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're, for whatever reason, we get trained to look and be excited about the chaos. And so I think really just having a conversation where you just start to look around the people. I mean, for you, it was somebody mentioned to you 2 decades ago, but it planted the seed for you to start paying attention to maybe some relationships that have some toxic traits to them. And it doesn't mean you have to take them, cut them off, but just understand them so that when you're in those conversations, you don't absorb that energy or that negativity, or just be aware of them and have the conversation like I did with my friend.
Yeah. Say, listen, this is just really affecting me in a way that is not good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's hard because that particular relationship was very fulfilling, and he had so many great nuggets of truth and knowledge in there. But being able to pull out of that or take what I needed out of that, but not just sit with like, oh, you and me, we're both the same. We feel the same things. And
screw the world,
we're brothers and all that stuff. It's very easy. It feels great to find somebody companionship in that way, but it's unhealthy to just sit in that.
Yeah.
You have to take that next step, which is to find healing from whatever that is.
Yeah.
And even back then I didn't know that I needed to heal from any of that.
No.
Yeah.
It's scary because in some ways you might feel like you're risking attachment. It's like, what if this is the only friend that wants to listen anymore, or the one that you find the most comfort with in the misery, and to have to be like, I may have to just let this person know this isn't healthy for me. Could be shooting myself in the foot and not have a friend anymore.
Yeah.
So it's scary because there could be this risk of attachment.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the risk versus reward. Like, is this something that's actually helping you? Yes or no, and making a decision about, well, what's more important in this moment, and knowing that actually doing that provides the possibility for it to improve.
Yeah.
Right. Calling your friend forward. Just like they could do for you. So it's absolutely worth the risk. I've had to do it myself, actually, with the person who told me about the 5 things. Like, you are the 5 people. And it ended up, that at one point I said, you know what, I just can't do this because I'm not in a good place. And this is actually making me feel worse. And like you, within a month, they kind of came back and were like, you're right. I don't want to do that anymore either.
Yeah.
So it does. It's something that can be really fruitful.
Yeah.
Scary, understandable, but especially with friends that you love so much, doesn't mean you don't love them. It just means that maybe you have to kind of love yourself more in that moment.
Yeah.
And see where it is you're trying to go, and if that's going to get you there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah. I tried to align, and I didn't even align myself with somebody else that, that was more attuned to what I wanted to be, or because that's sometimes what you're trying to do is just look for somebody. I think some of the things that I read from Jim Rohn was like, the people that you hang out with. So I didn't cut him off and then go, okay, I need to find the 5th friend, or replace him with somebody that's more positive. Because that may not always be a possibility. It's very difficult to find good connection. I think it's more easy now that I'm more open to it.
Yeah.
Walking around more aware and having these conversations, I find myself even more so now, even meeting somebody new, the relationship is almost always deeper right from the get now because I'm just more open to it.
Yeah. You're deeper.
Yeah, I'm deeper. Yeah.
You're deeper.
Yeah.
You're asking deeper questions.
Yeah. Which can make it sometimes uncomfortable for the other people,
Yeah.
in the core friends. They're like, Noel just wants to talk about his feelings. You know what I mean? So, that may be one of the reasons why I don't get invited out as much as I used to. But they did invite me this weekend and I didn't go, but just because I had other commitments.
Yeah.
But I did really want to get out there and hang with the fellas and do those, fun things that I'm so used to. And those are really important too. Having these deep conversations and healing are definitely important. Yeah. But I still think it's really important to nurture those long-lasting relationships for those people that have been there with us for years.
Absolutely.
And family members and all that stuff, because they definitely provided some sort of learning for me over these years and also helped me to become who I am today with the experiences that we had together. So without those people, I wouldn't be who I am today.
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes it a little bit more difficult nowadays.
Yeah.
But I think that may just be my own stories that I'm telling in my head because I haven't given myself many opportunities to hang with that group of friends, my core friends that I have in the past since I've been on this kind of path to healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing, for people is to just seek community.
Yeah.
We're talking about running your race. Where, when you're doing something you absolutely love, you are lit up, you can feel like this is something in an alignment for you. Look around, like who are those people? That could be your community.
Yeah.
And start to form deeper connections. And if you don't have a community, then create one.
Yeah.
Which is really what you've done, right? With creating a men's circle. It's like, well, there's other people that also want support and are moving in the same direction, or at least in, self-development and create community.
Yeah.
There's meetup, there's things like that.
And there's tons of different things.
Yeah. I love hiking. Well, then go join a hiking group.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a wellness and a spiritual group that you join.
No.
It could be a car club.
Yeah. You're going to find people you probably like because they like hiking too. And they might like other things.
Motorcycle clubs, anything like
whatever
that.
it is. Cooking, I don't know, whatever it is. But something that you would love doing. And then who's also there doing that thing also.
Yeah.
That could be a way of, finding community.
How do you find things that you love to do?
Well, you kind of feel into I always going to go back to the body, right?
Yeah.
Whenever I'm doing something and I'm like, ooh, this feels great. I love this. I love, whether it's yoga. I love yoga. I love doing things like that, or breath work. Hello. Fit for service, right? That's us running our race. And man, those connections are so deep and so easy.
Yeah.
That it becomes more natural.
Yeah.
So it's totally possible, to build community or find community, but it does take effort.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to know yourself.
And vulnerability.
Oh, the gateway to everything, vulnerability, is to just really know yourself. What is it that you love? You're right. Like, how do you find that?
Yep.
Well, you're going to have to find out.
Yeah.
Or who else is on the same, personal growth path.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go find that.
Yeah.
Just start small. But, what I really want to do is just invite people to get curious.
Yeah.
Like whether or not you want to poo-poo it and be like, no, that's not true. Okay, maybe it is, maybe it's not. But take a look.
Yeah.
The statistics are there.
Yeah.
The history is there. And maybe it is.
It doesn't hurt to ask the question.
Doesn't hurt to ask the question. Doesn't hurt to start looking around.
What am I listening to? What am I watching? What music am I listening to?
Who am I hanging out
does
with?
affect your mood and your
energy, man, your frequency.
Yeah.
And your energy, your frequency. And when you are in the midst of all that other stuff, that is also energy and frequency.
Yeah. If you don't believe that what you read and what you watch influences how you feel, then stop putting on exercise music that pumps you up, because play
try
some
to get a good
slow
workout.
jams or some baby making music and try to get a cycle spin class or something. It's not going to work. It's
Exactly.
It's facts.
Exactly.
So pay attention and be curious to the things that you absorb, the people you hang around with, and the race you're running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whose race are you running?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's been another episode of Let That Shift Go podcast. I'm Noel.
And I'm Lena. Let us know what your questions are, and we'd love to use them on a future episode. Or check us out on Insta at Let That Shift Go, or visit our website, serenitycovetemecula.com.